Welcome to Your College Bound Kid,
a podcast for parents, college counselors, students, and anyone who wants a weekly deep dive into the world of college admissions.
Hi, I'm Hillary Dickman. I'm the Senior Assistant Director of Admission for Marketing and Communications at Colorado College, and I'm also a parent of 2 college students.
I'm Lisa, and I'm a clinical psychologist and college counselor. I have a daughter in college, a daughter in high school, and a son in middle school. After 30 years in Chicago, we recently moved to North Carolina.
My name is Mark. I'm a college coach in Atlanta and the parent of 2 daughters. Karis, a graduate of Davidson College, and she is the founder of the Spanish tutoring company, SpanishHelpToday.com. And Joy is a wellness coach at the Keenan Flagler Business School at the University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill. And I'm so blessed to be able to work alongside both my beautiful daughters at School Match for You, college counseling firm that I founded in 2010. Good morning, friends. A lot of exciting things happening right now for me. First of all, my Spartans, there are only 6 teams left in March Madness, and we're one of them. We are standing strong. And, you know, I started becoming a Michigan State fan in the 8th and the 9th grade. So when Magic Johnson was there doing his thing. And 40 plus years later, it still brings me a lot of joy. So yeah, we're going for our 9th Final Four since 1998, which is tied for the most with anybody. So super pumped about that. I'm second in our family March Madness bracket. And I had an idea right after I submitted my bracket. I'm like, we should do one next year for Your College Bound Kid. So that's what I'm going to do. Maybe one of you up there can remind me about that, but I don't think I'll forget. So yeah, Joy's winning the bracket, but I'm right on her heels. But can you believe it? I'm not going to be able to watch the game. Yeah, we play Auburn, 5:20 right in Atlanta to see if we go to the Final Four. Why can't I watch the game? Because I'm at the SACAC conference. So that's the Southern conference I go to every year that brings together approximately 500 admission officers, 500 college counselors, all types, anywhere from private school, independent school, CBO, public school college counselor, IEC, all of us meeting of the minds with admission officers for tons of workshop and professional development. So regular listeners know I attend this every year. It was in Jacksonville 2 years ago. It was in Raleigh last year. This year, I don't have to travel. It's just downtown here in Atlanta. And every year I come back and share some highlights from you from the conference. So you can expect to hear that from me over the next couple of weeks. So a couple announcements. April 13th is a big day. Not only do we have a reception in Dallas, Texas, which I'm really excited about. I lived in Dallas for 7.5 years. I loved my time in Dallas. So it's a very special place to me. And I'm kind of excited to be able to do a reception there. It's from 4 to 6 p.m. Central Time. So if you live in the Dallas area and you're a YCBK listener, we'd love to have you join us. You can just go to yourcollegebounkid.com to see the events page, and you can sign up there. Be speaking on college admissions and taking questions. By the way, on the sign-up form, there's a place where it asks you what topics you want me to address, and I'm taking that very seriously. And so whatever's listed there are things that I plan on addressing. So if you're there in that area, we'd love to see you. But 1 hour after that's done, we've got our first webinar in 6 months. Last one we did for you was scholarships with Carlin Green, like in September, October of 2024. Jen's the founder of Polygents, and Polygents is doing some cutting edge work. I'm really impressed with this company. I'm really impressed with Jen. Her presentations are great. Parents, if you're looking for something to do for your 9th, 10th, or 11th grader over the summer, Polygents puts these great customized projects together that are based on student interests. They have over 3,000 industry experts and PhD students who pair you up in a mentor-mentee relationship, and they come up with a really good thing for your student to do, and, all designed to be in your area of interest. And so I encourage you to come out and attend that session. College counselors, it's really good for you to understand how Polygents is different from others doing this work. There's people out here charging $15,000 for these types of projects, and they charge about 1/6 of that price. That's one thing I really like about them. They're in it to help kids. And so come on out, join us. Once again, yourcollegebounkid.com. See the events page. You'll see it on April 13th, 8 Eastern, 7 Central, 6 Mountain, and 5 Pacific. And then I'm doing 2 more events, August 17th in Austin, 6 to 7:30, and August 22nd in Belton, Texas, 6 to 7:30. Same format, Q&A, meet and greet, meet our listeners. Sign-up sheets are all up on the website. If you live in that area, we'd love to see you. Today's episode, I want to share something I'm seeing more and more and kind of give you an admissions tip that might help your pocketbook. And then I'm going to take the areas of the admission process that take the longest and tell you where I think it's ideal to start doing these different tasks within the admission process. Now, if you missed episode 520, you might want to go back and listen to that. This is kind of a two-parter because last week I went into the most time-consuming parts of the college admission process. I'm not going to rehash a whole lot of that today. I'm just going to mention them briefly and then tell you when I think an ideal time is to start doing that part of the process. And then we'll have our final part of my interview with Rob Franek, editor-in-chief of Princeton Review, and he's sharing the latest findings from the 23rd College Hopes and Worries Survey. Now, I'm not sure if you noticed this, but we've been getting interviews up on the Your Housebound Kid website a lot sooner lately. Kathleen Delaski, you remember I interviewed her in Henny's College, her book, that interview's been up for weeks. Don Williamson, the interview that's going on right now on Thursdays, on what hiring managers look for when they're making hiring decisions. That third part of that interview hasn't run yet, but that interview's been up on the website for a week. So there's 2 reasons why we're getting them up earlier. One, sometimes it's just time-sensitive content that we want to get into your hands as soon as possible. And then every now and then we get a complaint. I'd say probably the biggest complaint that I've heard since I've started doing Your Housebound Kid is, why do you have to break the interviews up into 3 or 4 pieces? Why can't you run them all in one consecutive interview? Well, once we need a full-time staff to do 104 of those a year. That's one reason. It's just part of how we have to manage our time. But I'm still respectful of the fact that if that feels choppy to you and you would rather have the content in a non-choppy form, the solution to that is just listen on the website. So we put the entire audio file up there for you to listen to. And sometimes when there's content that I think is really going to be valuable, we'll put it up in its entirety, even if it wasn't an interview, even if it was a question from a listener in the news segment. And I've done that for 2 different segments that just launched on Thursday's episode. The first part is with Andy Strickler, and that's a 3-part conversation that we have that is insightful in so many ways, and that word doesn't do it justice. So that entire conversation is up as a single audio file under the interviews tab. And he says a lot of things that Andy breaks a lot of news in things that he says. And I encourage you, if you like to listen to them all, in their entirety, to go over there. If you like to just listen to it when it queues up when the episode releases, that's fine. Burger King, have it your way. We aim to please. The other one is the conversation with Hillary that we started last week, do's and don'ts at college fairs. That's up now. If you don't want to wait till Thursday to hear the don'ts, maybe you got a college fair coming up this week or next week and you want to prepare for it, then you may want to listen to that now. Both the do's and the don'ts, the whole 40-minute segment, 45 minutes, maybe closer to 45, is up. Once again, just yourhouseboundkid.com under the interviews tab. All right, let's dive into today's content. So friends, I promised you I'd share both a trend and a tip. So something started happening about a decade ago. I would have a family and they were interested in a college. The student would apply, the student would get admitted, and this is a non-binding admission, so no early decision. This would apply to either regular decision or early action. I saw it a lot with early action, but I also saw it with regular decision. And so they would get an 8 award, and the family would not respond to the 8 award, and the reason they didn't is because they're still looking at other colleges. And then the college would send them a change in the 8 award, an improvement in the 8 award. And this isn't in the hundreds. It's always at least 4 figures. One college, Tulane University, did this 3 times to a student that I have that's at Tulane right now. So I'm seeing more and more of that. That's happening to more of my students this year than most years. So the one tip is, even if you think you might accept an offer from a college, if you have one, just do nothing and just wait and see if they do, in fact, change their aid award and offer you something better. Doesn't happen the majority of the times, but it happens enough so that it's a tip worth sharing. All right, we're going to transition. We're going to get back to talking about what parts of the most time-consuming components of the college process should you do and when should you do them. And I said this last week, I'm going to say it again. These time-consuming aspects of the college process, I'm just listing them in the same order I listed them in that last week, not because they reflect what's more important, but just honestly, they're the order that they popped into my head when I was preparing last week. And so I'm just going to be consistent and stay in that same order. So don't want you to interpret what I say first as being more important than what I say at the end. I do want to share one thought I had after the podcast aired that I think is important. Know yourself, to yourself be true. One of the most important components in this process is the student getting to know yourself. Who are you? Why do you want to go to college? What environment will you thrive best in? What types of jobs do you feel would be most fulfilling? And so that's kind of a time-consuming part. Now, once again, that's technically not the college process to me, because that should be just you in life, figuring out what you want in life. But it kind of is, because there's a college component of it, right? What you want in a college. And so it's hard for me to pinpoint when this should start, but I would say the 10th grade is a good time to start thinking, journaling, if that's your thing. You know, could be early part of 10th, could be late part of 10th. There's people that will do it sooner. There's some that will do it later. But I'd love to see people starting to think about this kind of thing in the 10th grade. You know, 9th grade is all about trying new things. It's all about adjusting to high school, building friends. And you get to know yourself by trying new clubs and trying certain courses and realizing, yuck, I don't like that class. Oh, wow, this chess club is the most incredible thing I've ever been a part of. So you're really doing the process, meaning getting to know yourself just by exposing yourself to different things. And the next thing I'm going to say, I can't stress it enough. I'm going to say it a few times because it's that important. I can't give you a one-size-fits-all time to start this process because kids are different and kids are ready at different times. On the one hand, I may have a senior who's not even really willing to engage yet. And that might be an indication that they need a gap year, or maybe a form of non-traditional schooling would be their best pathway to start off with initially. On the other hand, you'll have somebody like co-founder of this podcast, Anika Madden, and co-host for the first 3.5 years. Her daughter, Janaea, was all in 6th grade. You know, our regular listeners will remember I refer sometimes to this 10-hour college admissions video series that I worked on from 2012 to 2014 called Game Changer, and it came with like a 170-page workbook as well. Well, Janaea would go to her mom, Anika, and say, when are we going to watch the video and go through the workbook in the 6th grade? And Anika's really into this stuff, or she wouldn't have partnered with me to start a podcast. And if you heard her on the start of our 8th year, she was on that episode, you could hear her passion for education there. But Janaea was wearing out Anika because of how much she was all into this stuff. So that's just showing you kids can be very different. You could have a 12th grader not ready. You could have a 6th grader all in. And so that's something to really keep in mind, because, you know, there's a reason why certain sayings make their way into our lexicon and they become aphorisms and axioms. And one of them is you can take a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. And that's true with this, right? You try to shovel this stuff down your kid's mouth when they're not ready, you know how that goes, and it doesn't go well. All right, so let's talk about some of the things that I talked about last week. College research. And I mentioned there's 2 phases to the research, because first you have to determine which colleges you're going to apply to. Then you have to decide, of all the colleges that you're admitted to, one, are you going to be an ED candidate or not? And that depends on a lot of things, including your budget and whether the schools you are considering even offer ED, because most schools don't. But then you're doing the research all the way up until you decide which school to deposit at and enroll. That even after you deposit and enroll, you still should be researching what the transition's like. So research never really stops. I would like my students to be starting to research by late 10th grade, or at least the summer of the rising 11th, because knowledge is power. And the more knowledge you have, the more it empowers you to make good decisions. And this is especially true if you're looking outside of your immediate area. The other thing I said that takes a lot of time are these custom prompts, these college-specific essays, what most people call writing supplements. Now, this is harder because colleges don't release them to August 1. However, they have already confirmed with the Common App long before then what their prompts are going to be for the year. The Common App starts asking for the prompts in April. And I've been told from credible sources that a lot of people don't have them ready then. They're not going to boot them out. But they certainly have them done by late June and submit it. So, I like to work with my students to see if we can get them before they're released on August 1. There's a couple different ways you can get these prompts most of the time before August 1. If you guys want me to do a segment on that, just let me know. I'd be happy to share with you the different ways I train my students to try to get these custom prompts before they're actually released when the new Common App comes out, which is August 1, technically. But there's another exercise I like students to do that's very helpful, and that is, okay, let's say it's a junior's class of 2026. So I'll say to the juniors, I want you to put together a master spreadsheet for any school you're even remotely thinking about applying to with the custom prompts listed on there for the class of 2025. And then I'll ask them, why do you think I want you to do this for the class of 2025 when you're the class of 2026? And I say there's 3 reasons. Normally they guess one. And the one they guess differs from person to person. So what are the reasons? Well, reason number 1 is because colleges reveal their values and what they're looking for by looking at their prompts. They absolutely reveal their values and what they're looking for. That's information that you should want to know. Knowing that is part of the research. Knowing that may or may not influence you to decide whether to apply to school or not. So that's one reason. Another reason is there's about a 50% chance they'll keep them the same as last year. So you can already start to bullet point some thoughts down, start thinking about the questions they asked last year, because it's about a coin toss chances that you're going to get the same question. And then the third reason is because even when they change, they rarely change the amount of work involved. So, you might have to write 5 or 6 of these custom prompts if you're applying to certain schools. Other schools have 0, and a lot of schools have 1 or 2. And so it's very helpful to you to get a sense of about how much work is involved in actually completing the application. Because if a school doesn't have custom prompts, for the most part, once you're done the Common App portion, you're done the application, other than some minor things here or there. So for that reason, that's a great exercise and a really good time. I ask my students to do this like before they go into the AP study season. So it's like a good project for March for juniors. It really is. But even a sophomore can do this. It can look at the prompts listed for 2025 and then 2026. And then, of course, you could see yours in 2027. And I say they reveal their values. Well, if you notice that they change, it doesn't mean their values change. It just means they're emphasizing different things. I mean, that would be a great lens into understanding a school, to look at 3 years of prompts. That would be a great insight into the school and what they care about and what they're looking for and who they want to be and who they feel they need more of in their student body. So that's a great timeline on that project. And then I said college visits. Okay, that can take a lot of time, especially if you're looking to go outside the region. Once again, cannot emphasize enough. Is your student interested? Dragging them around if they're not that interested, could really result in some blowback. But if they are, spring of 10th can be a really good time. Summer, if you're rising 11th, can be good. Fall of 11th can be good. people start the process at different times. If you're starting and you feel, oh my goodness, I'm late, then do it in spring of 11th. But any of those times can be really, really good times. I would also say students that have older siblings, like if your parents give you a choice to go on a tour with them, go on the tour. Because I find when I work with a second or third sibling in the family that's been on a bunch of college tours, just because they were along for the ride with their older brother or sister, they're farther along in their understanding of what they're looking for in this process. So the next thing that can be really time consuming, and I mentioned this last week, is money, right? And there's a lot in there. It's first of all, figuring out your budget. What's the most you can pay? Well, you need to go through a whole bunch of exercises to do that, to figure out how your expense is going to change. Now you don't have a kid at home. People are shocked how much money they save when they don't have a student at home. I had a family I was working with this year, and this is not the most resourced family. And they systematically went through every single one of their expenses: food, travel, gas, utilities, and then they looked at all the different things, whether it's test prep or cheerleading camp or football camp or all the enrichment stuff. And they figured out they're going to save $15,000. And literally they thought they could only pay $15,000 for college, and now they're up to $30,000 after doing that exercise. So, that's a really good exercise to do junior year. I mean, that's a parent exercise parents can do because you're looking at money. Now, talking to your kids and getting them on the same page about what you expect when it comes to things like, do you expect them to take out a student loan? Do they have to pay it all back, or are you going to split it and pay it back? Are you going to split it with conditions? Like if you get a 3.0, or if we feel like you're working hard, like all of these things are things, first of all, parents need to think through how they want to handle that. And then they need to engage their student on it. Do we expect you to work during the school year, during the summer? How much do we expect you to work? How much of that money that you make from working is expected to contribute toward college? Are you going to pursue outside scholarships? How much can we contribute? Is the amount that we can contribute the same blanket amount no matter what? Or are we going to have a different amount that we're going to contribute for different schools? Then you got all the filling out of the forms, FAFSA, profile, all that stuff, appeals. The money part takes time. So I would say starting early with your student about the cost of college is good. Early and often. Frame their expectations. Kids will adopt to expectations. They like boundaries. I'm talking about like just when you start high school would be a really good time to start having conversations of, this is what you can expect from us in the way of contributions. This is what we expect from you. So parents, that means you need to think through your own philosophy on that. Most of the time when I talk to parents about this, these are things I haven't even thought of before. And it's understandable, but these are good things to think through. Laying out those expectations. As far as doing net price calculators, once again, that's another parent project. That's a good thing to do in 10th grade, just to get a sense of what college will cost you, even 9th grade, especially if you expect your income and assets aren't going to change considerably. Now, things like FAFSA and profile, okay, you can't actually do that until fall of 12th, but you can start looking at some walkthroughs and some webinars and getting an understanding of those kinds of things in the summer of your students rising 12th grade. Once again, those are parent projects. Next thing is it's very time consuming completing the activity section. It's just time consuming because there's so many parts, right? You have to decide which activities to include, then what order to put them in, what the title's going to be, what the description's going to be. You got to do all that in 150 characters. That's a great May-June project. And one thing a parent can do, though, is to track everything your student has done right from the time they started in high school. Some of my parents come to me having already done that, and it's such a gift you can give your student. Otherwise, you're trying to reflect all the things you've done over 4 years, and you're doing that in 12th or late 11th, you're going to forget things. So that's a great thing parents can do, is to just kind of track everything. What is it that you did, and approximate time commitments to each thing. But the actual completing of the application, that's like a great May-June project, in my opinion. Once you get through, AP season and school begins to slow down, or depending on where you are in the country, school's completely done. But it's before those custom prompts open up. And because once they open up, that's the only thing you should be doing, because it's going to be that time consuming. So the idea is to get every single part of the college process done. That's every single part of the application before those prompts open up, because they're going to take all your time and attention. And the goal is to not be doing this stuff in the senior year when you're juggling really hard classes. Like I've said before, you'll feel like you added 2 classes to your schedule. The next thing is very time consuming, is a personal statement. There's a lot involved there. You got to do your brainstorming exercises, topic identification, outline, multiple drafts, normally at least 4, sometimes even 6, and then have grammatical revisions. So with the students I work with, I give them 3 options, and I feel this works really well. For some, I have them do it like in February, March, like get it done before you go into sort of AP study season. Another option is to do it right when school slows down, like May, June, before those custom prompts come out, but school is slowing down. So that's another great time to do it. And then I have a hybrid view, which a lot of people like. So in the hybrid view, you go through a process where you identify your best topic and you come up with a great outline. But then you don't actually turn it into like the writing of the prose essay, but you noodle on it and you get inspirational bolt of wisdom in your mind. You jot it down, you take a couple months to just kind of think about it. And then you come back and hit it hard May, June and get it done by June 30th. So that's another thing. But once again, you want to get this done. In my opinion, you want to get this done before the July 4th, before that time, because now you should be all in on those custom prompts. And the variation there depends on a lot of factors. Mostly it boils down to like, what is the schedule of the student? Because if students are extremely busy, let's say with their sport or really demanding course load, or maybe they're really involved in musical theater or singing and they're traveling or they're working. I mean, whatever it is, it's all about fitting this around your lifestyle. So it could be that the spring is great for you because you're going to be involved in a summer camp for 8 weeks in the summer. It's not going to give you a lot of flexibility. Then get it done now, And so that's the biggest variation. All right. The next thing that's really time consuming is all the additional writing, other than the personal statement, other than the college specific custom prompts. And I'm talking about things here like the additional information section, letters of continued interest if you're deferred, and the new challenges and circumstances essay, also honors college essays, some of the additional writing in the file. So the additional information and the new challenges and circumstances, that's a great May, June project for juniors. That's a really great time to bang that out. Letter of continued interest, you got to wait until, if you're either deferred or waitlisted. So that's going to be, that's going to either be late fall of the senior year or spring of the senior year for that. Honors college stuff, you can start doing that August of your rising senior year. It's a good time to do that essay writing. And then, of course, test prep. Another time-consuming thing is test prep. So this, once again, is going to vary from person to person based on a lot of factors. One is their motivation for this. Some of it is budget. Some of it is how they're going to study. Some of it is what their scores are already. I mean, there's people that just don't even need test prep. They go in and they take a practice test and they already get the scores that they need. So there's a lot of factors here, but most people, it's worth it for them to put a little time into test prep, not go crazy over it. It's normally going to be in your best interest to do that. Even if you're applying to test optional schools, they still like good test scores rather than no test scores. And sometimes certain scholarship dollars are linked to having test scores. So for that, I really see 3 times that make sense. Summer of your rising junior year, fall of your junior year, and spring of your junior year. I do not like people starting this in the summer. It's too late. I just don't like that. So how do you make the decision? Well, when do you have a chunk of time? So that's why a lot of times I like to do it with students summer of their rising junior year, as long as they've already had Algebra 2. If you haven't had Algebra 2, it's just really going to be hard to do well on these tests. ACT and SAT just have so much Algebra 2 in them. If you've had Algebra 2, my favorite time is summer of your rising junior year. But there are people who are super busy on the summers or they're not ready. And, you got to put some thought into this. Are you an ACT or an SAT person? Are you going to do self-study? Are you going to do group prep? Are you going to do one-on-one? Or are you going to do some hybrid view? The old days, we used to have I used to have a partnership with Kaplan in the old days, and we had a 6-pack where they do a group class and then 6 hours of one-on-one. It's like a hybrid between group and one-on-one. So there's some thinking you got to put into this. So that's what I like to do for students. And the last thing that's really time consuming is if a student decides they're going to go for outside or external scholarships, because they have to research the scholarships and make sure they're a good fit and a good match for all of them. And summer of your rising senior year can be really good for this. Most of it, do you have some extra time then? I like that time a lot. There are people that will do them earlier. And once again, this takes a lot of motivation on the part of the student. And I recommend a partner, whether it's a parent or a friend. So hopefully you guys found this helpful. We'll now transition to my interview with Rob Franek.
And now this week's interview with a special guest.
Friends, in the final part of my interview with Rob Franek, Rob talks about how far away from home do students want to go when it comes to college, and do parents and students agree on that? What does their survey show? Rob talks about where he's seen the greatest changes and responses in the questionnaire. Rob talks about being on NBC 35 times, and I ask him, what do you talk about when you go on NBC 35 times? Rob tells us how many days a year he's on the road traveling, and Rob talks about when he's meeting with presidents and boards of trustees. What are they asking him? Listen and enjoy.
Schools that are saying, okay, let's think about our liberal arts model, because most schools are tuition driven. Let's call it 95% are tuition driven. So they have to balance the books, as you say. But are we going to be able to balance the books with the same liberal arts model that we did 5 years ago or 25 years ago? And I think schools that are really poking at this and are saying, hey, let's poke at some of these taboos. Can we balance out, what our career outcome is going to be with a liberal arts ideal? And I suspect we can, but we have to have this conversation, and it might be a difficult one.
And you're seeing a lot of schools maybe never had a business degree, and maybe they're adding it, or maybe nursing. They're going to popular programs where there's a demand in the marketplace, and maybe they add engineering, just things like that that also have those higher salaries that people can, be comfortable paying. So we are seeing the growth of that. And the first point you brought up, were you talking more about colleges having regionals that live in another part and work that market, or were you talking about just, hey, we normally would go to Texas for 3 days, but we're going to Texas for 2 weeks, or we're going to go in the spring and the fall? It's probably both and, but
it's probably both. But I think it's the latter. I think a lot of schools don't yet. Not every school uses a regional representative, for any number of reasons. But I think changing the amount of time where you're building relationship with the mothership admission team from that from that school, from that institution, is probably where many schools are going to start. And then if they're profitable, we can think about bringing on a regional representative.
And of course, Drew's private, but for public schools, it can also mean trying to get more out of state kids, right? With that 2.5 to 3 times tuition price tag, even if you have to give a $10,000-$15,000 merit scholarship, it's still more revenue. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, we could look at University of Vermont. I'm a huge fan, but they're just the population in the state of Vermont is relatively slim.
Yeah.
So University of Vermont for years has had to recruit, I think in many ways, like a private school.
Yes.
So they were always on the road. They were always building relationships. They were not just in New England states, but across the country, because they simply didn't have the population that could sustain the university. And I think that many public schools are following that route. Now we're seeing the attractiveness for just Southern schools in the New York City, Long Island, Connecticut, New England. I mean, there's a drive for students moving south.
I don't know if you know Fabrizio at UTK, University of Tennessee, Knoxville.
I don't.
He's over that office. So I interviewed him, 2-hour interview, and on the topic was how UTK went from 17,000 applications to 60,000 in 7 years, which he was at the college board for almost 15, and they hired him from the college board, and he had been working with schools, and providing a service to help them drive applications. So he brought a lot of the things he'd been coaching to, but it's an exact example of public schools doing this and Southern schools grow. Anyway, it was just a Just
Oh
an
yeah.
example. Yeah, interesting.
I'll listen for the podcast. I don't know him, but I could imagine. I mean, that's
Yeah, I'll
an
send you the link. I
incredible
think I'll
turn.
send you the link. I think you'll enjoy that. And now I've got another one similar coming up on High Point
Oh
because
yeah.
they went from 2005 they had 1,600 kids. At first they got up to 6,400 kids, but pretty much took everybody. And now, I mean, they were denying, like, numbers were much higher than ever before. And so they've done it a little differently. And so, it's and our listeners like this kind of stuff.
Oh, I geek out on it. I love it. Yeah, that's gonna be a great one. Great
Let me
conversation.
transition to this next question, which this
Yeah.
is one of the most fascinating ones for me to read. So
Okay.
you asked, how far from home would you like the college your child attends to be? And what I found fascinating about this was, so the question was fewer than 250 miles or more than that. And parents were 50-50, right? And I think
Right.
you guys picked a good number, 250 miles, because that's about 5-hour radius.
Yeah.
And then students were like 35%. So basically, about 1 in 3 students is saying, I want to be close to home, but about 50-50 the parents. And that's what I experienced in the counseling room. It's more often the student that wants to venture away, and the parents like, I need you in a car drive in a day.
Of course. Of course. I do love this one. And this has been on the survey for a long time. And I should note that, this cohort of students and parents that we have here is interesting. And I think this is representative of many students wanting to go further away from home. But when it comes right down to it, most students will stay within, let's call it 150 miles, 180 miles, 3 hours if driving distance from their family home. Just when it comes down to it. But early on in the process, this one comes up, and it is eerily consistent year after year.
So, Rob, I know you've been looking at this study for years and
Yeah.
doing comparison data and things like that. Where are the questions where you've seen the biggest movement? If you were looking at it almost longitudinally, especially you have the luxury of having the vast majority of your 20 questions have stayed the same for well over a decade. Where can you literally say I've seen shifts in attitudes? I mean, 10,000 is a pretty big sample size.
Yeah.
What do you want to talk about in response to that?
The first one, we hit it up at the top of the conversation, but the first one is just nervousness around debt. And I cannot underscore this enough. Even for families that have great financial wherewithal, it doesn't matter how much financial wherewithal or how challenged a family may be, the specter of debt, the question of college costs, feeling that you have to navigate expertly the financial aid process and filling out the FAFSA form and any other forms that a school might ask us to do, has there's a great deal of stress that parents and students continuously feel. Now, that said, there was a shift in 2007, 2008 from the last recession where students were just concerned, or generally speaking from our survey results, were concerned about just getting into their first choice schools, weren't as concerned about the cost and navigating the financial aid process. So that to me has changed, and it has changed dramatically in the 20 plus years that we've been doing this survey. The other one is just, and again, we've noted this, but the other thing is, again, I think students are becoming very savvy about talking about career and career outcome, but coupled with experiential learning communities as part of the research process. Now, I think that maybe, people in our age group, when we were looking at schools, I would have assumed that I'm going to go to school, I'm going to come out with more career curb appeal than certainly when I went in. But I didn't, I was just ignorant, and my parents were ignorant of how to understand, how to ask about those things in the process. Career development, career services, co-ops, internships, whatever that nomenclature might be, and that changes. But now students are savvy about it, and parents are expecting to have those conversations. And I think just, telling your parent listeners that it is okay to have those conversations, to ensure that when you're on campus, to certainly stop in, and more than stop in, to speak with some representative from the career development office at a school that you're visiting. Why not? Why wouldn't you? And I think schools, admission teams that are truly savvy, enlightened, are going to ensure that you have FaceTime, have some ability to build a relationship there as well, because it completes the circuit of conversations and it diffuses fear and worry.
Rob, I heard from an inside source that you've been on, TV. I don't know if it was NBC or national TV, like something like 35 times.
Yeah. Last
Yeah.
week was my 35th on NBC. So
Yeah, 35 times on NBC. So obviously you're doing a really good job when they ask you to come back so many times. So what are the things that you're asked to talk about when you go on NBC for 35 times?
This last segment, well, a lot of it is around what students and parents are feeling, this idea of hopes and worries, and how do we successfully help them navigate through these things. So as we said before, it's one thing to look at these survey findings, but what are we going to do to give confidence? Like, I'm going to open up my talk tonight at Laguna Beach High School, and I will say to them for this hour discussion in the first 3 seconds, I'm like, if you walk out of here more nervous and less confident than when you walked in, then I have failed you. And I have no intention of failing you. Like, I mean, we're going to bear hug these things together. And they're tough issues, but they're knowable and navigable. Like, whether we're talking about the SAT, AP exams, the financial aid process, or college research, we understand that there is information out there that can make students and parents not only feel confident, but go through this process with joy and excitement, which I know you and I feel.
Sure.
But because you can do this. And that, to me, is the goal. And I think that, on 4 or 5 minutes on national TV, that kind of comes across. And I appreciate that they're looking for, some voices out there. But we do talk about the things that make students nervous, and then make sure that we're giving them the data so that they can make a clear choice moving forward.
I would think school leaders reach out to you too, presidents or, administrators. And, you've got the survey, you're up there listening to a lot of, how many times do you speak here around the country, Rob? It's like over 100. There's a big number, isn't it? I know it's a lot.
It was 107 last 2024, and I think I will dwarf it. And
there you go.
I'll share this one funny story for NBC last week. The segment ran to almost 6 minutes, but then, which was great for the college conversation. But there was a chef speaking after us,
right?
And then when she found out that her segment was going to be cut by 2 minutes, I thought she was going to stab me with her fork.
Oh, that's a good one. So I can only imagine, that if I'm an administrator, president, board, like, you're somebody I want to talk to, because, not only do you have this data wing of what you guys do, but you're just talking to so many people. So when you have these kinds of conversations, what are the questions that they're asking you?
Many of the things that we talked about now, and I really appreciate you bringing this one up. I've been doing a series of talks for boards of trustees. So, and boards of trustees. So I've given maybe 5 or 6 of them in the last academic year. And they want to know admission trends. Let's look back 20 years, but let's do some soothsaying here. And what is going to happen in the next 3 or 5 years? And I think that's where, because, we're steeped in so much data at the Princeton Review, certainly college hopes and worries, but I have hundreds of thousands of students that participate who are current college students, and then lots of administrators. So just, being able to pull that together in a reasonable way, and then show over time trends that have happened. And then undoubtedly trustees or college presidents are going to say, oh yes, I see that at my current institution or my former institutions. And now creating, some sense of using that data to have an informed conversation moving forward. That's generally what happens. And they know I'm keen on understanding what students are doing. So undoubtedly, I'm going to be speaking to students at schools, but I still rely on our student survey to do the work there.
Just a couple more things about the survey worth mentioning. So the current survey is parents and students, 7,023 students, 2,294 parents. Parents made up just over 25% of total respondents. And then also all 50 states, DC, including Canada and some countries abroad. So pretty wide swath there. One of the other interesting things that came up was paying for college. And so the question, how necessary will financial aid be? Extremely necessary, 48%, very necessary, 29%, somewhat necessary, 18%, minimally 5%. Is this one you've been asking for a while, and is this one you've seen change over the years?
Since the beginning, absolutely, we've been asking this question, and this is the one, again, addition from the fear of death, as we've discussed, but this idea of just thinking about how financial aid is going to be necessary. And this was one of the questions that through the financial difficulties last year with the FAFSA or the challenge with completing a FAFSA in 2023-24, this just came out again and again, how this really hurt so many students and their parents, because financially it is such a necessary component of the college process that I think the result of last year was that fewer students simply decided to apply or ultimately to matriculate at four-year colleges. And that was the sad reality. Now, I think, this year we're seeing some more green shoots there, particularly as the FAFSA, it seems, has really righted itself, with large help from the College Board, which you give them props for that as well. But again, I think this is saying, hey, we have to understand our customers, and this is a big one.
I have a question that has nothing to do with this. It has more to do with what we talked about last time when we got into your student surveys. I would think that a lot of colleges would be lobbying you to get into that book. Do you get politicked a lot by, hey, we're great, you got to include us?
Oh gosh, I have so many stories, Mark.
I'm sure you do.
Offline to you, though.
Maybe you can share one, maybe without mentioning a school name. Is that possible?
Sure. Yeah. Well,
okay.
I'll just give you some general things. We and I'm grateful for this, but the Princeton Review works with 1 out of every 2 students who will apply to college in any given year, and I say that with humility, and I'm grateful, but they will use our products. They will use multiple of our products or resources. Many of them are free products on our website or books, or they relatively low cost, or working with us for the SAT or ACT or AP exam. So I get it. But because of that, college presidents, senior administrators understand, whether they agree with me or not, or agree with the Princeton Review's mission and its focus or not, they understand that we have a great voice in this process of informing students. And I remind them, I'm like, listen, my job is to be a student advocate. I want to make sure that students and their parents are given the best information and the resources that they need to make a confident and a competent decision. And I know that that's where you and I are united. I mean, you're doing the same thing, right? You're informing them. You're bringing this conversation to the table so that we can part understanding and feeling more confident around this process as we move forward.
Awesome. This has been great. Anything you haven't shared that you want to share with our listeners in closing? I want to make sure not make you late for your Laguna Beach.
No, you're good. I'll be super early. One thing, and this came up for a conversation this morning, just talking about the recent Harvard announcement, for moving the threshold of financial, of income brackets for families. So just to summarize, Harvard at $85,000 total family income would have had free tuition for its students, now moved from $85,000 to $200,000. And one of the questions that I was being asked were, are there specific Teflon majors that students ultimately matriculating into Harvard or wherever, that they could move into and have, some great financial wherewithal upon graduation? You had hit on a couple of them: healthcare, nursing, education. That's a big vertical. And then, just business management, marketing, finance, being the two big ones, but then also computer science.
Sure.
We have new ranking lists on game design, which I've been doing annually for the last couple of years, but it just recently came out. Another one, just thinking about these things, and if parents are anything like us, just these different majors that weren't available when we were in school, or maybe
I was just looking at that before I came on here. USC, I think, took your top spot for game design this year.
It did, and appropriately so. I mean, it is a colossal program, and these students are just going. And there are so many schools on this list, from large schools like USC to relatively small schools. But I like the idea of being able to continue the conversation of how our higher education landscape grows from academic disciplines, but then also us being able to talk about it from a mission perspective and really think about it from a research perspective if you're a college-bound student and your parents and families.
Rob, this has been great. I always enjoy our conversations. I look forward to seeing you in Columbus at NACAC in 6 months. I know you'll be there.
I can't wait. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'll stop by and see you. And really appreciate you coming on here twice within about a half a year. So keep up the good work.
I will. Thanks, my friend. Be well. Take care.
Thanks. Yeah. Friends, this concludes the final part of the interview. You can go to yourcollegeboundkid.com to see the whole interview in one audio file. On Thursday's episode, Part 2 of 3 with co-host Andy Strickler, talking about how the financial challenges colleges are facing is impacting admissions decisions and admission processes. Next, Hillary will continue with the final part of our answer to a question from a listener from Kirsten, who wants advice about college fairs. Last week talked about the do's. This week we'll focus on the don'ts. What should you not do? For our interview, it's the final part of my interview with Don Williamson of Comcast Advertising. We're discussing what employers look for when making hiring decisions. And for our college spotlight, it's the final part of Kevin Newton talking about the 2 colleges in London that are very Americanized. Friends, all colleges have released their decisions now for the class of 2025. Some people are ecstatic. Some are disappointed, and some are somewhere in between. But every college presents you with an extraordinary opportunity to have a momentous, life-altering experience if you adopt the right mindset and if you take advantage of the opportunities. So I close you out with words of wisdom from one of the giants in the profession, Chris Gruber from Davidson. I want you to hear what he said when I said, what is your advice for students, parents, and college counselors? All right, last question. Your best, well, it's really 2, but your best advice for students? I'm going to give you 3 because you're...
Oh, you keep changing the number. Feet. What's the deal here? Come on, you're a professional interviewer. What are you doing?
Being unprofessional. Best advice to students, parents, and college counselors.
Yeah. I think for students, one is going to be appreciate that you have more control of this process than you ever think. You do. There's so much of it that you can shape. Do things early, do things in a timely fashion, and you're going to do very, very well. And know that there's not just one place. I think there are a variety of places that you can go to. Treat it as though it's almost an additional course. Spend some good time on it. Because I think where you spend your next 4 years can be a powerful, powerful thing for you. So there's one. To the parents, I think students feel a lot of pressure in this process. The greatest thing to do is tell your students right now, before they're starting the college search process, that you're proud of them. And it will have nothing to do with the label that you put on the back of the car, or the sticker, or the sweatshirt, or the hat that you ultimately end up wearing down the road. You're proud now, and it doesn't have to do with where they're getting into college. And with counselors, it's always going to be, know that we're in this together. We are partners, we are colleagues, and we are here to serve. And I know that there's a lot of places that you need to be managing and understanding, but let us know how we can help you. We're ready to do it at any step of the game.
See you on Thursday, friends. And that's our show. A big thank you to you, our listeners, for tuning in this week. If you find this podcast helpful, please follow us, and you'll get every single episode as soon as it is released. If you're interested, there are a few ways you can really support our podcast. You can click the share button and send it to your friends and acquaintances. You can help us pay our staff and our expenses by donating on our website. You can write a review for us on Apple or Spotify. I'm the producer of the podcast, but we have a fantastic team of 15. Shout out to our co-host, Dr. Lisa Ruff, Dr. David Williams, Linda Depker, Susan Tree, Vince Garcia, and Julia Esquivel. And to our substitute co-host, Sylvia Borgo. Our sensational sound engineer is Nemanja Motvich. Our amazing music is from Victor Allen Weeks. Marketing designs are from Kimberly Blass. Lily Parikh manages our Instagram. Our image editor is Talha Khan. Joyce Ducker does our website episode updates. And our webmaster is Stalianos Dimitriou. And if you want to have a coaching session with Lisa, Linda, or me, just text me at 404-664-4340. If you have a question you want us to answer, or if you have a recommended resource or article you think we should discuss, just send it to questions@yourcollegeboundkid.com. Our favorite method is for you to record your own voice at speakpipe.com/YCBK. By the way, check out our website, where you'll find lots of content that is not on any podcast app. Our website is yourcollegeboundkid.com. If you want to learn about other hot admissions topics, follow us on Twitter at YCBK Podcasts. We think of you as our listening family, and we look forward to meeting again with you every single Monday and Thursday.